Hey Jackets fans, welcome to Boom and Gloom, a Columbus Blue Jackets fan podcast where I discuss the boom, the good, and the gloom, the bad, of CBJ hockey. I am your host Anthony, also known as Whaler Jacket in the social media world, and I am North America's longest suffering hockey fan. That's right, I said North America. Up until now, I've always started my shows by saying I was Ohio's longest suffering hockey fan. But I got to thinking, maybe I'm the longest suffering hockey fan in the country. Then I got to thinking some more. Maybe I'm the longest suffering hockey fan in North America. Because I can't think of any situation in Canada where a hockey fan would be suffering longer than I have. One could argue the Maple Leafs and their Stanley Cup drought of 67 years. But you know what? Since then, the Maple Leaf fans have had plenty to cheer for. Their fans have seen their team win playoff rounds at least. Their fans have seen plenty of winning seasons. Now, sure, they've been disappointed with the end result of the playoffs, but they have at least had hope. I listened to the 32 Thoughts podcast with Elliot Friedman a lot, and I decided to send an email to them, to their thought line, asking if they agreed with me that I am North America's longest suffering hockey fan, or if it was just, if I was being overly dramatic. I told them about my history as a Whalers fan and now a Blue Jackets fan, and how my favorite college team and alma mater lost their only national championship game in heartbreaking fashion, and how my favorite AHL team was disbanded and their arena was torn down, demolished. I got no response. So no confirmation, no agreement with me, but also no challenge or disagreement. So, until I hear a rebuttal of any kind from someone that makes me think otherwise, I'm just going to say it. I am North America's longest suffering hockey fan. And I'm glad to be back with you this week. I actually wanted to do an episode last week, but we unfortunately had a death in the family, so I had a lot going on. I couldn't justify, nor could I find the time to get away to do a podcast episode. But like I said, I am happy to be here today, but I continue to suffer because I just finished watching our beloved Blue Jackets cough up another third period lead and lose to the Detroit Red Wings 4-3 in overtime. Jet Greaves let in a softie in overtime, but otherwise played a solid game. But my first topic for today is about the Jackets being unable to close out games. And before I get into it, I just want to do a quick little warning here. My 10-month-old Labrador Retriever puppy, she is in a mood today. She is super energetic, super playful, and I'm just doing this podcast in my home office. There's a chance she's going to come in here and wreak havoc, in which case I will have to pause this recording. But let's get into it. This has been happening a lot this season. Squandering third period leads. The Jackets can't seem to find a way to close out other teams. And part of it, I think, is mental. They get in their own heads. They start gripping their sticks too tight. They start making mental errors. That leads to turnovers and increased possession time by their opponents, which leads to more offensive zone time for them, which leads to more shots, which leads to more goals. But another part of it is that the Jackets can't seem to keep their foot on the gas pedal when they have the lead. According to Brian Hedger today, the Jackets have given up 5 two goal leads in the third period so far this season. That's roughly a quarter or a fifth of their games. That is horrible. The team seems to play not to lose rather than playing to win, if that makes sense. They can't, put the dagger to the chest of their opponents. They play too conservatively. Sitting back on their lead instead of delivering that last crushing blow. And it is quite infuriating. And I can never say that word right. Infuriating. Another thing that is infuriating to me is that they've been playing a recent string of very close games. Not counting that Winnipeg game, of course. That was a comedy of errors, which started with the fact that the NHL scheduled them for a game away in Winnipeg the night after playing a long game at home. But anyway, 6 out of their past 8 games have gone to overtime. They are not putting away opponents. When they win, they are not winning convincingly. They barely hang on and win it in overtime or a shootout. Think back to their win against the Canadiens. Blew a lead, of course. Then just got absolutely manhandled in overtime. Just absolutely manhandled. They hardly had possession at all. The entire overtime, I would estimate, no exaggeration here, that they had possession for 30 seconds. It was that bad. But they somehow lucked out and escaped with a shootout victory. What I'm saying is that both their wins and their losses have been unimpressive to me. I mean, of course losses are unimpressive, but their wins have been unimpressive too. Today's game against Detroit, they played their best team game I have seen in a while. They should have won that game, but they didn't. They were up 3-1 in the last 8 minutes of the hockey game. And they walk out of that arena with a 4-3 loss. That is completely unacceptable. Heads should be rolling because of this. Now, you could argue that they, once again, had some bad luck. The Red Wings' first goal was a complete fluke where a player picked up a puck that hit a linesman and was all alone in front of Jet Greaves, who had almost no chance in that situation. And it wasn't like the Jackets didn't have their chances. Sean Monahan had a breakaway late in the third, but he was, of course, shut down by the Red Wings goaltender. Marchenko, Johnson, Fantilli, Werenski, Chinakhov, they all scored that goal. But it was Monahan who is snake bit this season. I must also add that Brendan Gaunce, playing in his first game of the season after a call-up from Cleveland, he made an amazing diving play to get the puck to Monahan to set up that breakaway. Gaunce had overall, I thought, a very good game. I thought he fit in very well. But unfortunately, again, Monty couldn't convert. Something is just up with Monahan this season, which I'll get to here in a bit. But the bottom line, you can say the Jackets have bad luck, and I certainly do all the time. But good teams can overcome that bad luck more times than not. The Jackets, they're just not a good team right now. They're an average team. If I had to give them, a particular rating, I would say they're average. They're getting good goaltending right now. But because they did not upgrade their defense, and because several forwards have taken a step back this season, and because Don Waddell was unable to bring in another forward for their top six, Their record certainly indicates that they are just an average team right now. And until this team finds that killer instinct, that extra level, then they will continue to just be an average team. And we will continue to see games like this one against the Red Wings the rest of the season with, some other anomalies sprinkled in, of course. Right now, one of the things that is killing the Jackets is the lack of an effective second line. I have not done the research. I have not examined the other 31 second lines in the league. But the Jackets have to have one of, if not the worst, second line in the league at the moment. Monahan, as I said, is not producing. Miles Wood is not a second liner, but hasn't played too poorly there. I'll give him that. Actually, I would say he's making the most of his time there. And Kent Johnson has just flat out sucked. Yeah, I said it. He has flat out sucked, and it really ticks me off. This is a guy with so much potential who had 25 goals last season. Right now, a quarter of the way through the season, a little more than a quarter, I think, he has 2. This is a guy who's supposed to be one of the catalysts on the power play. Well, his sucky play has gotten him removed from that power play unit, the first power play unit. He gets knocked off the puck consistently, might I add, like a rag doll. He has not made wise decisions when he's had control of the puck, and he was a minus 12 the last time I checked, by far the worst on the entire team. Now, all that said, he had a much better game today against the Red Wings. He was noticeably better, noticeably more confident. I'm hoping that this is the first step to him regaining his form. And even Monahan looked a bit better today. I think he collected 2 assists. So that's a step in the right direction. But the fact remains that until I see otherwise, their second line is one of the things holding them back. And as I said, I am not satisfied with Wood on that line. I don't see him as a long-term fit there. But the thing is, if you asked me who I prefer in his place, I don't know. I don't know. The honest answer is a new addition to the team via trade. I don't think Boone is the answer, but I'm pretty sure he'll slot in where Wood is now when he returns from injury. The Jackets' first line is doing great. The third line is probably one of the most reliable in the league. They play good physical hockey and chip in with some offense once in a while. And the fourth line is a fourth line. I mean, as time goes on, I will say the more unhappy I am that Isaac Lundstrom is on this team instead of Corrali or Danforth. But there's nothing that can be done about that at this point. It's our fourth line for better or worse. They're not expected to put up many points anyway, but they're a fourth line. But if you can't get some reliable, consistent offensive output from your second line, then you're in trouble. And that is what I think right now is the biggest thing holding the Jackets back. You can't rely on your first line to be the ones always outscoring your opponents, like by themselves. But as I said, Monty and KJ look better today. So maybe they'll go out there, maybe they'll start to gel, and we'll get some consistent offense out of them in the near future. All right, so that was a bunch of gloomy complaining, but let me take a moment to talk about some good CBJ news. There are two players right now who have elevated their game and look fantastic. Adam Fantilli and Jet Greaves. If you listen to my podcast regularly, you will probably remember that I called these two players out recently. I said they needed to step it up. They weren't living up to expectations. I even complained that supposedly comparable players like Connor Bedard, Leo Carlson, and Will Smith, they were completely outshining Fantilli this season. Well, I'm not saying he heard me, but since then, since being moved to the top line with Marchenko and Voronkov, Adam Fantilli has been playing inspired, fantastic hockey. He is suddenly up to 9 goals, which I haven't checked, but I think that's tied for the team lead with Voronkov. And he has looked right in place as the team's first line center. The way he ended last season gave me hope. It gave all Blue Jackets fans hope that he was going to become a bigger star this season. But as we all know, he started the season slowly. Thankfully, he seems to have come alive, and I hope that this is not just a fleeting hot streak, because the Jackets need him to be a consistent offensive force if this team is going to challenge for a playoff spot. Also Also, Marchenko has got to be the streakiest player I've ever seen, at least in a long time. He'll pop goals left and right, and then he'll go 13 games without scoring, like he did at the end of last season. And also because, of course, as I mentioned, there isn't much offense being generated by the second line. So Fantilli has stepped up his game, and so has Jet Greaves. Wow. Something like 11 points in his last 7 games, 8 points in his last 5 games, something like that. And it just can't be a coincidence that his recent surge has nothing to do with the absence of Boone Jenner. Last season with Boone out, Werenski stepped up and put the team on his back. I think this is him doing that again. It's like this switch gets flipped when Boone is out, and he feels like he needs to go out and play at another level with the captain out of the lineup. In one of my last episodes, I complained that Zach was not playing at a Norris caliber level. Well, I'm happy to say he has turned things around. If he is not playing at a Norris caliber level right now, then he is certainly close to it. Number 8 looks like he has found his game. He has found that extra gear, and I hope he continues even after the inevitable return of Boone Jenner. And by the way, speaking of Marchenko, Aaron Portzline recently mentioned, in addition to a couple other Blue Jackets fans I follow on Blue Sky, he mentioned that Marchenko is either already a star or a star in the making. Like a superstar, you know. My take on this, he's on the cusp. As I said earlier, he is just so streaky. And granted, he recently came within 1 game of tying a franchise record for consecutive games with a point. But those were mostly assists. And I can't remember the last game in which he actually scored, but I would say it's been about a half dozen. Now let me just say, when I was coaching youth hockey, I always preached that an assist was as good as a goal. And I wasn't lying. I truly believe that. I played hockey since I was a young kid. And I've always, even in my earliest days when most kids thought that scoring goals was like the measuring stick for success and for fun in the game. Even back then, I have always thought it was more fun to make a pretty pass than score a goal. To set someone up for a goal has always been more rewarding to me than putting a puck in a net. I always look to pass rather than shoot, even today in the beer league I play in. So assists, to me, are equal to goals. They are, of course, worth the same amount of points, 1. So I'm not going to knock Marchenko for getting more assists lately. That means the Jackets are, in fact, putting pucks in the net, and he is helping. But with his shot, his lethal shot, and the way he's been stick handling, he should be scoring more goals, more consistently. I think both he and Fantilli have the capability of scoring more goals than any other Blue Jackets player ever has in a season, which is 41, by the way. But if Marchenko is going to do it, he's got to be more consistent. He can't go 13 games in a row without putting the puck in the net. And don't get me wrong, it's not due to lack of effort. Marchenko seems to give his all just about every game. I don't pretend to know how to get him to be more consistent. I just know it needs to happen for him to reach his full potential, for him to be a true superstar. And by the way, if the Jackets had won today versus the Red Wings, Marchenko would have owed Jet Greaves a delicious, expensive dinner because he coughed up the puck horribly in overtime today. It was an awful turnover. It gave, I think it was Larkin. Gave him a breakaway, and Jet saved the puck in Marchenko's butt. It was just an egregious turnover. It was horrible. But it didn't matter because Jet let in a softie, and the Jackets lost the game. But as I posted earlier on social media, even the best goaltenders in this league will let in a soft goal once in a while. It's just unfortunate that it happened to Jet at that time, in overtime. Let's talk about Jet a bit more. Despite that soft goal, I think Jet overall played a great game. The score sheet will say he let in 3 goals in regulation, but I would argue that, really it was only 2 that he was truly responsible for. The first goal, as I mentioned earlier, by the Red Wings, it was due to the puck hitting an official, bouncing right to the Detroit player, all alone in front of Greaves, no one there to even slightly impede him. So there was not a whole lot he could do in that situation. I think he made up for it with the breakaway stop on Larkin in overtime. But my question is this. Is Jet the number 1 goaltender for the Columbus Blue Jackets? For a long while, the Jackets were sticking to a strict rotation. Greaves and Merzlikins alternating every other game. Then, suddenly, and might I say inexplicably, that rotation stopped. And now, Greaves is getting the vast majority of the starts. Elvis played in Winnipeg after Jet started, I think, like the previous 5 games in a row. And Elvis didn't play very well. Not that the team in front of him played extremely well either. But regardless, it almost seems like Evason has made the decision that Greaves is his number 1 goalie going forward. Up until that Winnipeg game, I may have argued that a little bit. I think Elvis has actually had a pretty good season so far. Not stellar, but decent. Better than last season. However, I do you think Greaves has seemed like the better goaltender? So if they were to officially anoint Greaves as the team's number one tender, I would support it. And I would hope that it would light a fire under Elvis and inspire him to play better when given the opportunity. And I just thought of something I wanted to mention earlier and forgot. Something I noticed about the Jackets, and I wanted to see if anyone else ever noticed this as well, or if I'm just being so pessimistic and overly critical that my brain makes it seem worse than it is. Now, before I go into it, I have to say that, again, I felt the Jackets were better tonight with what I'm about to tell you about. But I just feel that the Jackets have more trouble getting the puck out of their zone when it's along the boards and in the corners than most teams. Like a Jackets player is fighting for puck possession along the wall, gets it, but then can't clear it. The puck is stopped by a defenseman from leaving the zone. It seems to happen all the time. Or, and this seems to happen like 90% of the time, a Jackets player attempts to send the puck up the boards, oftentimes like wrapping it around the other direction. And there's always an opponent there to pounce on it. And I'm pretty confident this happens more often than not because I'm watching the game and I find myself hoping as the camera pans and follows the puck to the other side that the next player to come into the frame and pick it up will be a Blue Jacket. But I swear, 9 out of 10 times, it never is. It's always an opponent. And again, maybe I'm being overly critical and not noticing all the times when a Jacket is there. But I don't think so. And if I'm right about this, why is this happening? Why is there almost always an opponent there to keep the puck in the zone and not a Jacket there to get it out? Is it a positioning issue? Are players not where they're supposed to be? Or is it a coaching issue? Maybe the player or players are where Dean Evason wants them to be. Maybe it's, part of the defensive scheme he wants the team to play. I'm just not sure about this one. All I know is that it certainly seems to me that the Jackets have a heck of a time getting the puck out of their zone when it's along the sidewalls and corners. I don't know. If it's a coaching thing, then it's one of two things that I definitely think Evason needs to change. The other, oh my goodness, the overtime roster. Several times, because this team constantly goes to overtime, I have strongly questioned Dean Evason's ability to make wise lineup decisions. It's overtime. You need a goal, right? You need offense. The game is on the line. If you don't score, you either lose or go to a shootout. It is crucial to have your best offensive weapons out there. So why in the heck is Isaac freaking Lundstrom out there? The dude has no goals, 0, and 2 assists all season. Why is he out there? You have a bench full of better options. As a matter of fact, if I were to rank all the options Dean has at forward and overtime, I would rank Lundstrom last. He is not an offensive threat at all. He hasn't put a puck in the net all season. He only has 2 assists. So a case can't even be made that he would be good at setting someone up for a goal. Yet, he has seen overtime ice ahead of players like Chinakhov on multiple occasions. Dean put Matthew Olivier out there, and he lasted, I think, 18 seconds before a horrible turnover. And I forget which game that was. I just don't get Dean's thinking in overtime. If I were the coach, here's what I would do. Here's my list of overtime forwards in no particular order. Marchenko, Fantilli, Monahan, Johnson, Chinakhov, Coyle. Those are your 6. Those are your top offensive threats. And I know Coyle, you could argue he's not an offensive threat, but he's good at faceoffs. He's smart. He knows how to be in good position. So those 6 players, that's who you play. Maybe throw Wood or Sillinger out there if someone is gassed and would be better off resting. But that's it. You stick with your top 4 to 6 offensive threats at forward. That's what Montreal did. They just cycled through their top 4 to 6 guys. I felt like Caulfield was on the ice almost all of that overtime. I don't get the thinking in throwing Lundestrom out there. I just don't get it. Okay, I have 2 more things to talk about before I get out of here today. The first is Yegor Chinakhov. I know he seems to be a topic that keeps coming up, but it's just such an interesting situation. It's so hard to make heads or tails out of it. On one hand, I feel that he needs to be in the lineup and getting more ice time because he's playing, not because he's playing at a super high level and deserves it, but because that is the only way he's going to boost his trade value. But I understand if he's taken out of the lineup because honestly he hasn't been very noticeable. I've thought it a lot of times while watching games. Man, Chinakhov needs to try harder than this. I don't see him going after pucks and hustling the way I would if I were trying to make a point and get higher in the lineup and get more ice time and ultimately get another team to trade for me. The Jackets are in a really tough situation with him. Tonight was the first time in several games in which he has played where I felt he was noticeable. Yet, in all the games that he has not been a scratch recently, I ask you this question. How many good, clean shots has he gotten off? I counted 1 tonight, and I counted none in recent games. He has not had the opportunity to show off that elite wrist shot he has. Now, that could be the lack of hustle I talked about. It could be the lack of playmaking line mates. It could be a lack of chemistry with who he's playing with. I don't know. But it's really frustrating. I'm pulling for the guy. I really am. But he is not making the most out of his time in the lineup. And the coach is not putting him in a position to succeed. I personally think he would be a perfect choice for overtime. All that space to work with, maybe put him out with someone with a little better defensive awareness and see if they can get him the puck. But he has not been given that chance, and it ticks me off that this team is not doing this guy right. They're not helping him or themselves by the way they are using him. And again, I don't feel he has earned a spot in the top 6. I'm not advocating for that. I'm not a professional hockey coach. I'm not a GM. I don't know what the answer is. I just know it's not this. What they're doing now, it's not this. And lastly, Bill Simmons. I'll admit, I don't know much about the guy. Podcaster? Pretty famous? Sportscaster? Something like that? I don't know. Anyway, as most of you are well aware, because most Jackets fans became quite aware quite fast, this dude, Bill Simmons, called the Columbus Blue Jackets the most irrelevant team in all of professional sports. Whoa. Did that rub some fans the wrong way? Wow. Mr. Simmons seemed to create a firestorm with that comment. Fans were rushing to defend their team and calling out Simmons for being incorrect. The thing is, I'm going to be blunt and honest with you here. I can't really disagree with him. I can't. In fact, I might even say I agree with him. I might. As a true, die-hard, bleed Union blue and red Jackets fan, I might agree with him. And, of course, let me explain. I want to back up what I said. First of all, out of the 4 major professional sports leagues, NFL, MLB, NBA, and NHL, which would you say, honestly, is the least popular, the least relevant here in the United States? Yep. Sorry to say, wish it wasn't, but it is the NHL. So, if you take the least relevant league and choose the least relevant team in that league, who do you choose? If you go by wins, the Jackets have had the least wins of any franchise in the last 25 years, I think. I haven't looked that up. They have also won the least amount of playoff series, a total of 1. So if you go by success, the Jackets are the least successful team. If you go by marketing, I, of course, don't have the data in front of me, but do you think the Blue Jackets, sell a lot of merchandise to casual hockey fans? My guess would be no. I mean, if I had to guess which team sells the least amount of merchandise, I would guess it's the Jackets. And if it's not them, then they got to be in the bottom 5. They don't have the most dynamic, popular logo, all right? They have pretty common team colors. And before I go any further, just let me say, I love the Blue Jackets colors, but I'm just trying to think of this from an outsider's perspective here, trying not to be biased. People may go out and buy Sharks, who else? Ducks, Knights, Kraken, Mammoth. They might buy that merchandise because they love the colors or they love the logos, or they're the newer teams. I would bet not many feel that way about the Jackets and their logo. But I bet there are a ton of casual hockey fans out there who wouldn't even be able to name the team if they were shown a Blue Jackets logo. And again, I'm just talking about like casual fans who tune in once in a while to watch a game. I mean, if I'm just some random hockey fan in Idaho, unless I really love the team, I'm not going to buy a shirt with an Ohio flag-based logo on it. And the Jackets, of course, are not an original 6 team. I bet there are a lot of casual hockey fans out there who will sport Blackhawks or Red Wings or Bruins gear just because they are a popular, recognizable brand. They're an iconic brand. Sorry, Jackets fans, we are not. So if you go by team success, meaning winning seasons or playoff success, the Jackets are last. They're not relevant. If you go by merchandise sales or brand recognition, the Jackets are last or close to it. Not relevant. And what if you go by star recognition? This team doesn't have and has never had a player like a Connor McDavid or an Austin Matthews or a Sidney Crosby or an Alex Ovechkin. I mean, heck, even the Minnesota Wild have a superstar in Kirill Kaprizov. The Jackets don't have a recognizable superstar. Somebody that makes news all the time and makes the highlight reels all the time. They are currently a bunch of no-names. No offense to Jet Greaves, who I would argue is the most recognizable Jacket due to his Norris caliber season last year. So you can be upset all you want. Bill Simmons may be correct. I mean, who would you argue is the most irrelevant franchise in sports if it's not the Blue Jackets? Definitely not an NFL team. Probably not an MLB team. The Colorado Rockies, maybe? Maybe? Pittsburgh Pirates, maybe? What about the NBA? I tried to think of irrelevant NBA teams, but since I don't follow the NBA at all, I tried to think which teams I hear about the least, like on the news and social media, things like that, among people I hear talking about the NBA. So the Charlotte Hornets, maybe? Sacramento Kings? Do they still exist? I don't even know. New Orleans Pelicans? I think that's still a team. The Memphis Grizzlies? I really don't know. I really have no idea. But unless you are choosing one of those teams I just mentioned, the choice seems pretty straightforward to me. It's the Jackets. Now, what changes that? That I do know. That seems pretty easy to me. The solution is winning. They just need to win. For the first time in 25 years, they need to become a team with sustained success. Not just a winning season here and there. Not just a trip to the playoffs here and there. I'm talking about sustained success. To become a team that for several seasons, you just assume they're going to make the playoffs. You just assume they're going to be towards the top of the standings. And they certainly need to win more playoff series. As I talked in my last episode as well, they are long overdue for a superstar. Maybe Fantilli is that guy. Maybe he's that guy in the making. Maybe it's Marchenko. But how many Blue Jackets do you see on those, the new golden age of the NHL commercials? 0. Because they are not relevant yet. And trust me, I want them to be. I want them to be relevant. I really, really do. But take off your rose-colored glasses. They are not. Yet. Sure, if you are a fan of the Jackets enough to even be listening to this podcast about the team, you are a passionate fan and you love them. There are plenty of people like you, enough to fill Nationwide Arena and more. I mean, look at the amount of people that went to that Stadium Series game last year. The fans are there. The Jackets are very relevant to all those fans. That is a given. But big picture here, large scale, the Blue Jackets are in fact, or could be, I'm not saying definitely, they could be the most irrelevant franchise in pro sports. The good news, they don't have to be. That could change. And it should change. They just have to start winning. Like I said, sustained success. I could talk more about a rebranding to help, but I'll save that for another episode. I won't get into that now. All I'll say is that they may be due for a change. Logo, uniform, something to spice things up and signal a change in direction for this franchise. Okay, done for today. That's all I got for today. Thank you for stopping in to listen to me rant and rave about the Jackets. As always, feel free to reach out and connect with me. You can find me at Whaler Jacket on sites like Instagram and Blue Sky, or send me an email. My email address is whalerjacket@gmail.com. I welcome your comments, questions, and suggestions. As I've said before, the whole reason I do this podcast is because I love talking about the Blue Jackets. I don't claim to be an expert. I just love talking about them and don't really have anyone else to talk to. So please, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to do an episode where I just have a couple of other fans come on and we discuss the Jackets. I did that before in some of my earlier episodes. So if you're interested in doing that, make sure you contact me and let me know. We can maybe work something out. In the meantime, this has been Boom and Gloom. I hope you'll come back and give it a listen again next time. Until then, go Jackets!